Hello, America. Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We're the show, freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. Welcome. Glad you're here. We have a great sponsor, and I want to get right to it because in these topsy-turvy times, you want to cut down on your healthcare costs, save all kinds of visits that you really can't afford. Well, these two products did it for me. Immune system, unbelievable what it does. But it does lengthens telomeres, enhances vitamin C, vitamin D, and this is really important. This is the key to boosting the immune system for a long time. This saved me from RSV with strep lung linings, can help you too. Once I started to get back in the gym after I used that product, this product came into play. Sore joints and muscles, well, rub it on. It took me 6 to 8 weeks to get full relief. Today I can do anything I want. You could too. And then there's the skin cream for cuts and burns together. That's the starter pack, 15% off. And right now I'm going to tell you, the time we're heading into, you need to be your own caretaker because services may or may not be available, and they certainly will be more difficult to afford. So go to iwantmyhealthback.com/Dave Hodges, 15% off the starter pack. Well, the only way out of this situation we're in, the derivatives debt, we've covered that. Now it's time to look at what are their solutions because this is not what they really would like to do because people will rise up. We're going to cover a little later the misery index that's going on. That'll be a later segment, probably tomorrow. The misery index in America is off the charts. I've told you, people are fed up. They're not taking anymore. But even a bigger predictor is the devastating effects of this negative economy that's attacking us from several directions. And the camouflage that the leaders put on the problems is wearing off. And people are seeing through the nonsense, are seeing through the lies. Let me just give you one example. Inflation. Oh, it's only 3.3%. Really? They don't count gas. You ever heard of the war with Iran? Strait of Hormuz? They don't count the price of food, like you don't have to drive to work and you certainly don't have to eat. Does that sound like they're measuring inflation? No, no. Core inflation is probably 10 to 15%, depending on your price. Food inflation is in the 20s, and it's been that way for a long time. Have you eaten out recently? Okay, you got your answer. So what we're looking at right now is an economy that is out of control. Life's not affordable. As I've said many times, 65% of Americans can't afford a $500 car repair bill, and they're living month to month. That's 2 out of 3 people. 2 out of 3. So bail-ins, which I believe is going to be a solution if this solution is not brought into play. And what would that be? Well, let me tell you the history story, and then I'll tell you how we're going to emulate it. First, we need to look at Europe. Then we need to look at the creation of the Federal Reserve. And then we need to look at applicable principles to today. Okay, Europe, they're facing war. They got all these alliances, right? They're in competition for colonies and raw materials. And then the Archduke gets assassinated and all the alliances, the Triple Alliance, Triple Entente, and they decide, boom, they go to war. End of August, right? Okay. Well, the European banks were already in really big trouble. And I think I'm one of those people who believe World War I was planned and exacerbated. They just needed a match to start the fire, and that was the assassination. Assassination of an archduke should not have started this war. That war was already set to happen. The top leaders knew it. The bankers certainly knew it because the banks were spending like there was no tomorrow, and they weren't replenishing the gold in their treasury, and they were gold-backed currencies. Well, inflation started to hit in, there's unrest, people are mad, businesses are failing, and depression was starting. Now, if you go to war, first of all, that's one solution because you need increased production. At least people have jobs to go to. But you got to be able to violate the gold standard backing up currency. So what they did was just say, okay, well, we're not going to be on the gold standard. Now we can print all kinds of fiat currency. And like for a while, like with a bad drug, like heroin, it'll make you feel better for a while. And it got them through the initial phase. So they go off the gold standard, they print money, they've got the war as the excuse. Now let's be patriotic. It's for the war effort. We're going to have to do it with a little bit less. It's okay. So that's how they sold it. Now, that was 1914. In 1913, American bankers, give them credit, JP Morgan, Rockefeller, and the rest of them, they saw what was happening in Europe. They go, well, we're kind of in the same thing. So they did something that the Europeans will imitate. When the Federal Reserve Act was passed, they also included the graduated income tax. First time we'd ever had one in American history. The Europeans said, that's brilliant. We're going to make the people fund the debt on their own for the money we've spent, not their own fault, but they're going to have to cover it. And the war again was the excuse. And then on top of that, they sold war bonds. Now, America being the greedy nation that it became under the Rockefellers, we got involved in the war because we were supplying both sides. They knew it was going to happen. The German U-boats are going to have to sink ships to stop the Allies from basically outmanning them and outsupplying them. It was inevitable. When the Lusitania was sank, President who? Worst president in American history, Woodrow Wilson. He told the industrialists, he said, no, I can't go to war yet. I got to get elected. Get me elected and I'll give you your war. And so 2 years after the Lusitania was sunk, that was used as the excuse to go to war. And in between then, Woodrow Wilson was elected. And we got the war. And the war was really profitable. And now we're following in the Europeans' footstep on how to avoid a depression and make the people pay for it with income tax. Pretty simple, isn't it? Now let's put it into today's concept, right? We're in the same position. Oil is killing the supply chain. You're going to see shortages show up this summer, and that's just over a month away. You're going to see prices increase like no one's business. And the Federal Reserve chief has already said, when he comes in on May 15th, he's already said, hey, we're going to lower the interest rates. That means print more money. Okay. Inflation, your savings account being worth less, will fund a devaluing dollar on the debt, the $40 trillion. Problem is, there's the credit swap derivatives debt we've already talked about. That's a real problem. That's why the bail-ins could happen. But I don't think they're going to do that first. I think the bail-ins will be the second reaction. First, they got to fight the war. Now, they don't want a world war with nuclear weapons. I don't believe that, although they are playing with fire. But I do believe Russia and China will be consulted. And we're saying, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to do this. And you want us to do this because your economies will go under if we go under. So we're going to see a war with boots on the ground in Iran. And this is why I've been so opposed to TPUSA, because it's Israel first, America second. Israel's already said we're not putting our troops on the ground in Iran. We will. Mark my words, that is coming. That is the solution before the bail-ins. And they don't have to raise your taxes, although they're going after your home equity. I guess that is a raise in tax. And property taxes have gone up 3 times the amount of the value of the dollar. That's right. And they've gone up 3 times faster than inflation. Property tax. Once they go up, they don't come down. Homes are depreciating right now. They're going down. So what we look at right here, ladies and gentlemen, is a simple problem. They have a multi-tiered solution. They first want you to pay for the debt by decreasing the value of the dollar through inflationary practices. A war camouflages this. It puts people to work. It lessens the scourge of what AI is doing to the economy. And then they still have the bail-ins at their discretion where they can take your money. I would refer you back to the previous previous segment that we did with the bail-ins. Ladies and gentlemen, there's really no other way out of this. But if the whole thing crashes, well, we're going to talk about that next. Because if you get a crashed system, and I think Peter Thiel is hoping for this, and therefore J.D. Vance is going to be hoping for this, we're going to talk about what it means if the fiat money in the world fails, what's going to follow. And that's going to be Katie bar the door. Thanks for joining us here on the Common Sense Show.